Welcome to ChiroSphere, where we talk about all things chiropractic and some things, well, not so chiropractic. I'm Dr. Ray Foxworth, your host for ChiroSphere and CEO of ChiroHealth USA, the network that works for chiropractic. Today, we're excited to have attorney Michael Coates join us. Michael speaks and educates around the country at medical conferences and to medical providers. Michael is the president and founder of Personal Injury Made Easy, which offers a number of ways to help medical providers of all specialties who treat personal injury patients to succeed in PI. He authored a book, has an outsourced service that negotiates on behalf of your office with law firms, and has a coaching program to help providers do it themselves in the areas of process, profits, we're a big fan of that, and growth. Michael and I share a passion for compliance and also for chiropractic success. Michael, as I tell people, I am a recovering compliance officer, but I can't move away from it. A lot of people think about compliance and they think, oh my gosh, that's just one more thing to do. But what we have found in every case is the more compliant you are, typically the more profitable you are. It's a good thing. Before we kind of delve into some of the questions that we're going to ask you, I'm really interested in your why. Simon Sinek talks about find your why. What drove you to really get involved with the chiropractic, not just in what you're doing now, but also to the point of even getting involved with the chiropractic strategic plan?
Well, I'd say that for chiropractic, the medical magic of chiropractic, as I call it, came from, I had a chronic back problem. My back would always go out. And I have 6 kids. So you can imagine when they're little and sports is the big thing. And the problem was I was having such back problems, I literally couldn't even be attending things they were doing. And I didn't know what to do when I saw this buddy of mine, Tim Noble, who runs Anaheim Hills Chiropractic. My God, he just saved me. Literally, I was in so much pain and couldn't do things, and went from that to being able to never miss a game or a thing that my children had and throwing the ball around, all the things you want to do. And that meant more than anything. So one day, actually, Tim came to me when he was having problems with attorneys in the personal injury area. And my background was as a PI defense attorney and a medical malpractice defense attorney in my early days. Helping you guys, but going against the PI attorneys and the malpractice guys. And I hadn't really done
You're
with
on the
liens.
dark side, right? As
Yeah,
they say.
yeah. And he had liens, and I went to help him, and I got him fully paid on what he gave me. And that kind of got me started in this whole thing, even not only led to my love of chiropractic, but down the road, many, many moons later, when helping him, really brought about more, over 12 years ago, the business that I have today, championing you guys and other medical specialties around the country with a lot of my brethren. I call myself a reformed attorney. So I don't really do this as an attorney, but the fact is, like compliance, law is impacted and you're dealing in the legal space. And it can seem complicated. And a lot of, I think, providers get very fearful of this area, and they shouldn't be. But they also get misled, and they shouldn't be.
Yeah, there is a lot of misinformation out there. And what I found in practice is PI isn't something you should just dabble in. You really need, you got to know your stuff if you're going to do it and do it well. Otherwise, I think it can become problematic done the wrong way. Michael, I noticed, in looking at your website and information, you help doctors with medical liens, which means we're in line to get paid. Kind of explain to us what a medical lien is, and if that is something that can be done in all states. Do all states recognize medical liens?
Great question. All providers who treat personal injury payments basically have agreed to wait to be paid. Not to not getting paid, not to being paid less, but they've agreed to wait to be paid. So in most states, it's called a lien. Kind of like, let's say you have a roofer works on your house, and they can put a lien on your house to secure their payment. You're, as a doctor, are putting a lien on the personal injury case and any potential resolution that comes out of that. Now, most states are actually medical lien states. They have actually statutory provisions that give lien authority, or it might be common law lien rights. Others have what's called letters of protection. And it's kind of like an attorney's promise to pay. Not nearly as good as a contractual lien, which are actually contractual agreements that you have the patient and the attorney sign, where letters of protection is just like a paragraph issued by an attorney. Now, so when you think of compliance in many states, having liens is part of complying with the law. And depending upon the state, like Arizona requires recording of the lien. Okay. And in other states, it's giving notice of the lien right. So it is important to know the statutory or the nuances for your particular state. But whether it's a lien or a formal lien agreement or a letter of protection, they all technically fall under a lien.
So does the attorney have to agree to signing the lien, or are you able to just file the lien? Who do you file that with? With the courts? What's the process of that?
More like, how you're entering into a rental agreement where you're having your medical office space, right? You have it, the landlord, there's a contract, has the rights obligations, so nobody's getting surprised. Well, you're entering into, when you're agreeing to defer payment, you only want to do that when your financial back is covered, right? And that comes by the documents. So I can't stress enough the importance of a really good lien agreement, and most of them out there really suck. And while a lot of attorneys will try not to sign those, the fact is it's actually more important for the attorney to sign them than your patient, because your patient receives the services, right? So legally, they still owe for what the services you provide. It's like if I was in front of my house and somebody was going by and I told someone, hey, I'll pay you $20 to mow my lawn. An oral agreement, they mowed my lawn, I owe them $20. They can go to small claims court and enforce it. Same with you. The reason of having the attorney sign on why it's so very, very important is the law imposes, again, the Medi-Legal, fiduciary duty upon the attorney to watch your financial back as well as their own client. And here's where that's really important in personal injury. I mean, none of you guys want to go chase your patients about paying bills. It's one of the beautiful things about PI. You don't have to deal with patient financials, right? But if you don't have a lien agreement signed, or you've got the wrong letter of protection or no letter of protection on the LP states, the patient might say to the attorney, hey, send me Dr. Foxworth's money and I'll pay him, wink, wink. And you never get a dime. So you're back to
Right.
chasing the patient. Well, when
I actually paid for a roof on a patient's house. First time in 35 years of practice, I never sued a patient. One time I did because they got the settlement and they put a roof on their house.
Really?
Can't make that up.
I hope that only happens one time.
I thought about at least getting them to put the Foxworth Chiropractic logo on the roof, so you can see it when you fly over, but they weren't open to that, Michael.
I think the front of the house too.
Yeah, well,
but having that lien, it means that the patient said, send me like the money, like in your situation, the attorney can't. Literally by their own state bar ethics rules, they're not allowed to then send the money. They have to only do it with your permission. That's why it's so important. And that's one of you talked earlier about, doing PI right. There isn't a chiropractic practice in this country, in my opinion, that should not be having a PI segment. And why? It pays the best. Anything you're doing, if you can make the most profit on something, that's what you should be having. Plus, it's this gateway. And so many people don't know the medical magic of chiropractic. And the first time they actually get exposed is actually in a personal injury case. It's because some attorney or someone else said, go see a chiropractor. Some of them don't even know what chiropractic does. They find out when they see you. And once they experience you, that gateway leads to more from them, referrals, and lots of other things too. That's why PI, when it pays full out of network rates, you might have to wait to be paid, but it pays by far the most.
No doubt about that. And we'll talk about this a little bit later. Unfortunately, in our profession, and it may be the same in others, we have over the years developed what we call our PI fee, our workers' comp fee, our cash fee, our mother, father, sister, brother fee, our buy 10 visits, get one free fee. And as doctors will learn later when we talk about that, docs, you should have one fee, period, the end. That doesn't mean everybody pays the same, but your fee should be same chart. Your fee should not be based on who's paying the bill. And the reason we tend to have those multiple layers of fee schedules is because we do want to get paid more when PI is available or workers' comp, but we also love our patients and we bend over backwards to try to keep care affordable for them. And as we'll talk about in a few minutes, that can absolutely cause you some problems.
Well, why don't we stay on that topic right now? Let's hit it. You did a great intro to it. And from a legal perspective, I want you to imagine you're at a deposition. And I think a way to always think about things is I'm sitting in a deposition. I've got some adverse attorney wanting to hammer me on things. How am I going to be okay with it? Well, the problem that in PI, I think there's the one area you get attacked the most on are your fees and your bills. And so the problem, they want to, the defense attorney, for example, wants to show that you're puffing your rates. They're not real. And certainly we would have to agree that in the medical industry, why we have the No Surprises Act now to stop surprise medical billing is because there has been a lot of abuses in the medical field on rates. And in fact, a lot of the PIP states with high PIP rates, they seek to maximize PIP, unfortunately, not always on medical necessity. So getting back to fees, though, when you have one fee across the board, it's your out-of-network rate, it's also what your cash rate is, it's also what your PI rate, it's for everything. Now, the reason you do less legally, you're in-network because you sign contracts with an insurer that says, yes, these are my rates, but I'm agreeing to do it reduced because of being able to see, and you're doing marketing to get your patient, your insureds to come to me. Okay,
Steerage.
great. So I've gotten down. Cash is maybe the most tricky. While most states allow you can do less for cash because it's point of sale, the problem is people think I can do any reduction. Well, if you go to Nordstrom's, first of all, they don't give you anything less for cash, but let's say they did. Maybe it'd be 10 to 15%, not 50%. So the problem when you do a big cash discount and that gets revealed, well, then your rate really isn't what you say. You've puffed it.
Absolutely.
So as you go around lots of ways, you should really be keeping that in mind is where you've got a legal requirement like a contract that requires you to reduce, or workers' comp has a set fee schedule. You must charge that. It doesn't mean your regular charges aren't higher. It just means by statute, that's what it's been put down to. So then whenever you get asked, I have one rate. Now, by the way, back to the cash patients, I think, and Dr. Foxworth, you're really great with what Chiro Health does because you can set your own rates and programs with people, but you do financial hardship. So if there's a financial hardship that you've documented, now they can go lower and there's a reason to do that.
Yep. That is the one thing that certainly that we really try to stress to doctors is having a very solid office financial policy. And years ago, we put one together, and it basically says, in order to comply with state, federal regulations, PPO agreements, managed care agreements, et cetera, our office has established one fee for each service, and it applies to all patients. You may be entitled to a contractual network discount if we're in your health plan, if there's a mandated fee schedule like Medicare, Medicaid, if you're part of a discount medical plan, or if you meet financial hardship guidelines. And there is no other fee. And like I said earlier, you're putting it in writing that you have one fee that does apply to everyone, and you only offer discounts when there's contractual network agreements. Unfortunately, a lot of doctors think, well, if I want to be able to charge less to my patients, and I've had them tell me this, well, I just treat all my patients as financial hardship. You cannot do that. It's actually against the law to do that. As a matter of fact, the OIG has rules and regulations that talks about you can't even consider Medicaid patients as a financial hardship. You have to evaluate it on a case-by-case basis. So you can't.
That's the same thing when they try to waive copays on every patient. You can't. You're contractually obligated to take that once in a while for a reason. But people just think, oh, I don't have to get copays then. No, that's not true. You're again violating the law or by contract.
Yeah, when we have that conversation with docs, especially those that are out of and some that are out of network, they think, well, I don't have to follow the policy and the guidelines of that insurance company. Well, the reality is you may not have to, but you have to understand that patient has a contractual agreement with the insurance company. And if they don't pay their part, there's several court cases out there. The one in chiropractic is Kennedy versus Cigna, where Kennedy was a chiropractor, was not collecting the full copays and deductibles. Cigna took him to court, and the court said, the moment you relieve the patient of their responsibility, their contractual responsibility, Cigna no longer has the obligation to pay. Period. The end. And so, don't think that you can waive the deductibles, waive the copays, not to mention that's considered healthcare fraud, anti-kickback, and an inducement violation, just put a little icing on the cake. But you need to understand whether you're in network or not in network, those policies are a contractual agreement with the patient, and you got to abide by them.
As our daddies once said, Doc, is, put what you do. If you can't put on the front of the newspaper and be okay with it, something's wrong. You better be correcting it. Now, like I say, do things right so you can sleep better at night. Why do you take the risk and doing things off a slippery slope that once you do it, oh God, nobody caught me, and then that slippery slope gets deeper and wider. So you've got to stay on the right side of ethics, I think, always. And like a PI, like we both deal with compliance, but it's not just compliance by you. One of the things that I really stress that I coach, teach, and then do myself when I'm the outsource is with law firms, it's compliance by them. Their trust account handling requirements, their ethical obligations, the things they've got to do in disclosures, right? So, it comes around in full circle. I think, especially in PI, you get hit with all of it. And the one difference in PI, your regular patient, it's just you and the patient. You've got adjusters, defense attorneys, juries, judges, experts, lots of other people that may get involved into your stuff.
I love what you said about, just clean up the stuff that you're doing wrong. I close a lot of my talks by telling doctors that, we all love to see new patients, but if the next new patient you had was Ray Foxworth, insurance investigator or insurance auditor, is there anything in your office, your billing, your coding, your documentation, the way you handle payments, if there's anything that would cause you to squinch, have a pucker factor, go ahead and change those now, because the reality is you don't know that you aren't already seeing those people. And let's face it, one of probably the best ways for an auditor or an insurance investigator to find out if there's funny stuff going on in a clinic is to pose as a patient. They hire, even your state board of examiners, many of them hire investigators or people to go in to verify the funny stuff that, maybe there's been a complaint filed about. It's crazy.
Well, I think it gets into the point of, you guys are all really good healers. You spend so much time on perfecting the skills of what you do, and you're so good at it. The problem that I find, I think we've talked about this before, is unfortunately you're great healers, but most are kind of suck as business owners. And the business of medicine is different from actually doing medicine. And so you got to not be afraid to get help. You're great at what you do. You need to get the things where your weaknesses are, other people to help either guide you or do it for you, or, help to connect you with those that do. And that could be on so many different areas of your practice that is on the business side. I mean, personal injury is one of them, right? But I just really, part of what I do as a coach, for example, is I'm really helping them overall as a small business owner, how to be better, how to do it right. What are the metrics, the other things you should be thinking of? You're hiring, whatever it is that you're doing, because it becomes so important. And I think that, Doc, they think, if I just treat people well, everything's going to be just fine. And that's not the case. Medicine has never been under attack more than it is right now, ever than right now.
No doubt. Something you mentioned about when we are seeing a personal injury patient, and we also have cash patients. We have, a fairly wide mix of patients in our office. And I don't know if you know the story, but the whole reason that Chiro Health USA exists is because of a cash patient that I had. She was involved in an auto accident about 6 months after she's in care. I'm taking care of her and her family and the kids, and they're happy. I'm happy. And at that time, I'm probably charging $35, $45 a visit. 6 months later, she's involved in an auto accident. So I did what every doctor does. I billed my PI fee out. Well, this little lady comes in about 3 weeks after that with her explanation of benefits in her hands. And I walk in the room and I could tell, something was wrong. And so I said, Miss Jones, you look like you're upset. And this nice little lady gets up, walks over to me, pokes me in the chest and says, Doc, I know what you've been charging me, and I saw what you charged to State Farm or whoever it was. It's guys like you ripping off insurance companies to keep me from affording health care. I mean, that was a kick in the gut, Michael. And
no doubt.
What it made me do was I made a decision that that's never, ever going to happen to me again. And so it made me start looking at, why is it okay for Blue Cross, Aetna, and Cigna to all pay us a different fee for the exact same service, but we can't have a fee for our cash underinsured Medicare for their non-covered services? And that's when I found out about the DMPO, the Discount Medical Plan Organization, And that's exactly what you can do because it's a contractual network agreement that is really controlled. We're regulated by the Department of Insurance, just like the Blues, the Aetnas, and the Cignas. And here's the other most important thing. If you don't let even your cash patients know what your actual fees are and that you're trying to help them, then if they are involved in an auto accident or workers' comp, let's face it, there's nothing that looks right. And so we made a point from that problem forward that we let people know when we're helping them and what our actual fees were. And, that if they're going to get a discount, it's got to be under contractual agreement. So have that. It gets back to doing the right things. Guys, gals, doctors, you got to have the financial conversation with patients. That's why the whole good faith estimate thing came along, because
Yeah,
people weren't having conversations and people end up getting surprised about their bills.
right. So, I mean, everybody, if you're kind of never heard of No Surprises Act till right now, I mean, go to cms.gov/no surprises. So you'll be surprised. This is really important because it's going to only be grow and more. Patients have the ability for $25 going onto an online resource that CMS has to dispute a bill. If they never got the detailed bill, because you send it only to the attorney, or for other things that might not be in compliance with within a certain time period, they can get not only out of the entire bill, but if you got paid even years later on the PI case, they might be able to get that all refunded by you with interest. So learn about it and do it. It's better to be upfront, not only about, you can't just give a fee schedule. Literally, you got to give my entire plan of treatment. Here's how much the total bill is going to be. So they know it then, what their potential exposure is, like you would do. You wouldn't go to buy a car, drive it off the lot, call them up a month later and say, how much did that cost me? Right. So just realize, guys and gals, we're no longer to where we hide things. We need to be upfront, not just about fees, but about total charges. And you got to get comfortable in that. And I think you'll find that you might even find you're undercharging when you do it. And so you might be entitled to a bonus for yourself that you could support by some sources out there for reasonable fees. It's something I spend time on and teach. And it's really important, being comfortable with what you charge and how you charge it, and that it's correct and compliant.
Well, hang tight while we take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. Welcome back to our podcast with Michael Coates. We're talking all things PI and PI made easy. So, Michael, what common mistakes do you see providers make when they begin working with personal injury patients? What's the most common errors that you see, or what do you try to fix for them first?
Well, I think when you divide any business, I think you put it into processes, profits, and growth, right? I think that's the main three buckets that I kind of teach on. So the first thing really is processes. And I find that they either have processes in place that can harm a PI case or affect negatively their own credibility. And then they're not putting in value driver processes that make them more valuable to their patients, to the attorneys, and even themselves when it comes time to be paid. I'll give you a couple examples. I remember being at a conference once, I was speaking, and a provider and a doctor comes up to me after, and he says, you're going to love this. I've got all these Matchbox cars behind my desk, and I have the patient come in, pick out the cars that look the most, and then I videotape them as they show me how the accident happened. And I put my hands on my face going, you don't do that, do you? He just created a potential liability issue because he's not an accident reconstructionist, nor when the patient did it, would it be exact. And in a lot of states, if your patient is at least 51% at fault, zero recovery in the PI case. None. Why are you, so you have providers that step into the legal lane and do it wrong. You wouldn't want the attorney to do an adjustment, right? It'd probably screw up your patient. Well, say what you're doing on the PI case. So that happens also, I find a lot with, when the patient comes in, that first visit's so important. There's so many things to do. But another problem is, they sit in the lobby and you give them forms, so they download before they come in. Here's the diagram of the body. Circle where it hurts and assign a pain scale rating between 1 and 10. They don't know what difference between an 8 and a 6. They don't know. They're thinking, well, gosh, maybe I should do a 10 on all of it because my attorney wants it. Or the tough guy, I'm not a wuss, it's a 2. Or they circle parts and miss some that are really important because they're not thinking about it. So I find when they aren't being at least properly instructed, now you've got documentation that exists forever. And that's what, as I was a former defense attorney, I can't wait to find, because I'm going to nail that case based upon the screw ups of the doctor. Now, put it on the other side, one of the good things you do is I call storytelling documentation. And what's great for especially chiropractic, do you realize you guys see that patient 20 times more than their own attorney? Maybe the attorney sees them in the first visit. When they signed him up. They probably don't see him again unless they go to trial or a deposition. You see the patient all the time. So in your notes, you can tell the healthcare story on the effect, the ADLs, the activities of daily living, the before and after. It's so important to do that right. And that's where you become a true value driver that can actually, because of what you did, get increased settlement recoveries, make bad attorneys good, good attorneys better. It's amazing when you do things right and then avoid the things that you can do wrong.
I think that's really important. Anybody that's ever been through a deposition or gone to trial in a PI case, if you don't do it often, it is unnerving. There's a saying it's normal to feel abnormal in an abnormal situation. Well, that's an abnormal situation for us. And, I think the only way you get better at it is to do more of it and make sure you got a coach to help make sure you aren't asking things that you shouldn't ask, or having patients, like you said, draw out that's the medical or the legal side of it. And I guess the takeaway from that is stay in your lane.
I think another one is, I think it's being comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? So I think that whenever we get outside our comfort zone, in anything in life, I've never went skydiving before. You're going to be scared to death doing it. I'm afraid of heights. After I did it, oh my God, I want to go again, right? You've got to, even when you first became a chiropractor, when you first put your hands on somebody, you had to feel like I may hurt them. Now they've done it for 10 years. Oh my God, it's a piece of cake. I'm, all what I do is good. So you're going to feel uneasy and uncomfortable at the beginning of when you start to do things differently. And you've got to realize PI is a niche. There are nuances specific to PI, but they can help all your practice segments, because you're really going to learn how to do certain things better than you were doing them. And you got to be okay with that. Embrace a little risk, embrace the uncomfortable. And over time, you're going to get much more comfortable with it. And you're going to be a far better practitioner who has better patient outcomes and a more profitable practice.
So when you talk about the services that you guys offer at PI Made Easy, and again, I was on the website earlier, kind of explain to people the kind of courses that are available to help them get better at the processes. I think that is really a critical thing, is make sure you do have a proven process in place for dealing with personal injury or workers' comp injuries, the same as when you're dealing with a cash patient. I've heard people say, well, the documentation shouldn't vary from personal injury to a cash patient. Well, the reality is, I think there is more documentation that's required, because ultimately you got to be prepared for if it goes to trial or goes to deposition. And just saying, lower back pain again today doesn't cut it.
Yeah, not just that. I mean, you think about documentation, again, where referenced earlier, it's usually just you and your patient, maybe an insurer. But when you're dealing in PI, remember, most people looking at your records, they're not doctors, right? It's going to be adjusters, attorneys, judges, maybe juries. So the medical speak doesn't work with those. It's common speak. Now, would it be great if doctors all wrote it to where even their own patients could understand what's in the notes? That's really what should be done, but it's not what doctors generally do. That's why I say I think that when you do things right in personal injury, it helps your entire practice, because when your patients read your own notes and they can understand what's being done and see the path, the medical recovery, it's good. I call personal injury the high profit highway. And the reason is because you can get your full out of network rates. You can get paid for things that insurance does not cover, but you know that it's good for the patient. And there's so many other reasons why it's so good to be in PI. That's highway has 3 segments. So I said processes like you're remarking on, right? So putting in the things that don't hurt a case or your patient, and doing the things the right way and being a value driver. The second segment, which is the windy segment, goes up the mountain, when the weather comes in, the clouds, the rain, the snows, right? All of that to get through it, that's being profitably paid. It's hard in today's environment. Look how much insurance and health insurance is ratcheting down your reimbursement rates, lower and lower and lower. The attorneys trying to not pay you. All those things you got to navigate to out negotiate those who fight for a living, attorneys, which you can. You just got to learn how. But when you get over the mountain, you're on the other side, and that straightaway where the convertible top goes down, sun's shining, get the music blaring, pedal to the metal. That's growth. And growth with PI is not just a PI segment, but if you use it right, it's using the PI segment to grow all your practice segments, especially chiropractic because of being a rehab provider and that wonderful balance between wellness care and injury care. Just great stuff. So I think nobody can listen, can you name me anything, Dr. Foxworth, where chiropractic is the number one medical specialty that a patient sees? Not their family MD, not an ortho, not a neuro, not anybody else. It's a chiropractor that they first see. It's in PI. It's only one.
Interesting. So I want to go back to when I was in practice for years. Some of the most frustrating things we dealt with were, when you had an attorney try to cut your bill by 30, 40, 50%. How can you counter? I'll tell you what we used to do, and you tell me whether it works or not. If I had an attorney who called and said they were looking for a 30% discount, understand settlements aren't always what you hope they would be. And I always made the point that I'll be happy to consider lowering my bill 30% if you can provide me with a statement at settlement that shows that you, the other medical providers, the MRI facility, or whoever was involved in that care, in other words, if everybody's taking the hit equally rather than it just landing on my back. Is that a valid way to try to deal with that, or it just doesn't work?
Well, that's one way to assert it, but the attorneys are not going to. You're in dreamland. You think that they're just going to say, "Oh, I'm going to drop my bill by 50%." Instead of taking 33%, it's 16%, or instead of 40%, I'll take 20. It isn't going to happen. Well, in fact, one of the things I teach is I do negotiations training online. I call it negotiations Aikido. It's the martial art of dealing with those who appear to be bigger and more powerful, where you literally can own them, learning negotiations Aikido. So, one of the things, it's called the disruptive method that works, and disruptive, each letter stands for something. But one of them, like you said, it's to uncover the facts. And you did. If you get the facts of the settlement, like what you just said, when they lay everything out, what you're missing, for example, are the costs. If the costs were, say, $400, that means the law firm did very little other than gathering the initial things and making a demand. In fact, it probably never even got filed. Wasn't even a complaint filed. So when they're not reducing from there and everybody else taking this huge hit to get their client money, there's something wrong. Now, when they might have a lot of costs and you get a line item breakdown of the costs, now you see Uber, Lyft fees, transportation for the client, maybe loans to their client. None of those have a priority over you guys. So what you got to get to understand is where the attorneys are doing things right when you get that disbursement listing, and where what they've done is wrong. And I think that's going to then lead you, after you dig for the facts, what you assert is very professional, common sense, legally sound, and factually specific. And you can literally get leverage over lawyers. You just got to learn how to.
Got it. One of the other things that used to perplex me, I remember early on in practice, the mindset was, well, the higher the medicals, the better the settlement. And I don't know that that's still the case anymore. But what I saw happen over time were the attorneys insisting, if the patient was over 65, to file to Medicare. And I thought, well, that doesn't make sense if you want the medicals higher, not to mention now I'm getting reimbursed at Medicare rates if I file to Medicare. And of course, Medicare is always the last payer of resort, particularly with personal injury. But they'd also asked me to file to Blue Cross Blue Shield. And if I'm in network, boom, there go my out-of-network fees, as you described. So why are attorneys asking doctors to file to health insurance or Medicare? Explain that to me. What's the rationale behind it?
Well, like you've got doctors of all shapes, sizes, and how they do things. Well, the same with attorneys. Not all attorneys are good. Not all attorneys do it this way. So first of all, when you said about the bigger the bill, the bigger the recovery, that's actually been part of the problem. When you don't charge reasonable fees that are supported by market, the problem is that causes a problem for the attorney in the case because, in fact, if your fees and what you do is so bad and you've done it so wrong, you know what an attorney does at trial? They actually waive all your medical bills. They may waive all the medical bills and try just on pain and suffering because they don't want to have all the attacks to a jury being done by a savvy defense attorney because of all the screw-ups by the medical providers. So it's not the size of the medical bill. It's being able to charge properly, which can still be like 90 to 95% of the usual customary and reasonable rates, the UCR rates, and there's UCR publications, or even what Fair Health, if you go to fairhealthconsumer.org, a great place for chiropractic, and look at their out-of-network rates. All those can be incredibly supportable to help you. And that's what you want to be able to do. So the attorney so that you can knock off the attacks and the attorney can also do that. When you deal with health insurance, if you're out of network, I believe submit it still to the insurer. For whatever they pay, you can still balance bill because you're out of network. Good for the patient, still good for you. When you're in network, you cannot balance bill. And where they're saying you might be contractually required to submit to insurance, but here's the difference. In PI, remember we talked about earlier, copays and deductibles. Why would I want to have to pay copays or deductibles? And I might have an $8,000 deductible when an accident wasn't my fault.
Really?
So there are forms of things you can do, like a directive not to bill health insurance and things, because why am I paying that when it's not my fault? So you don't have to do that. One of the biggest problems I do find, like Dr. Foxworth, when attorneys say that to you, is they're telling you to do that after you've submitted your full bill, after you've already treated the patient. Now they say, submit it to health insurance because they're using your full bill to settle the case and wanting you to get paid a lot less and to pay you less so they and the patient get more. So it can be a complex area to navigate and definitely why you want to become more knowledgeable on it.
They're making money on the spread.
Oh, right. Yeah. Good.
On the niggas and
right. You mentioned about, and I really think that people need to be action oriented in what you do. And like I said, not be afraid to ask for help. There are resources out there no matter what you have in your business. If you're not good with your books, have your CPA and ask them for what bookkeeping help they can give you. In PI help, there are a lot of good chiropractors that are teaching some really good things on treatment in PI, whether it's on diagnosing the spine or whatever that might be. But they miss the parts of the nuances for personal injury that only an attorney can help guide you in what you do, but also that a business coach can help you do. So when you ask me about help, let me give you all some ways to help. And they kind of vary on, it's kind of like what you need, what you want to focus on. Some want to focus on growth. Some want to just be more profitable. Some want to be awesome in profits. So whatever those are, there's help. So would you mind if I listed where they can get some help, Doc?
Yeah. I was going to add, like I said, people may think you're just involved in liens, but I see you're involved literally in the billing side, like I said, in the profit and growth and mentoring. So what are the options for doctors, or what resources do you have available for them?
Great. So the first is a book. I actually just authored a book. It's probably the seminal book in the personal injury for medical providers. And it's called, the name of my company, Personal Injury Made Easy. It is a medical provider roadmap to successfully navigate the high profit highway. It's on Amazon. So you can go there. I think the soft cover is $33. The hard cover is $40. Hardcover, it looks much better. But I go on about, it's like a drive down the high profit highway with a bunch of people packed in the cars, attorneys and providers, and then me as the guide. And we'll take you through processes, profits, and growth. So those that like to do self-study and are book learners, awesome. You'll be so much ahead of the game just by the book. The next is, if you're really focused on that middle segment of negotiations and you want to learn on an inexpensive way to get better, I do negotiation training. That's Negotiations Aikido. And if you go to negotiationsaikido.com, there you'll find I'll have trainings coming up at different parts during the year. I've got an incredible, it's worth many, many thousands of dollars. One case, you'll get all of it back, multiple fold if you paid the full price, but I don't charge very much. So go there, check it out. It's meant to be over time. Maybe I think I'm doing it now an hour a day, 2 days a month, over a 6-month period, so you can learn and implement. And you'll be getting also access to my medical lien agreement or letter protection that I developed many moons ago, and I update every year to decrease what the attorneys can do. That document is leverage over lawyers. So that's the second thing. The third is where I serve as an outsource. So I call it PI Billing Pros. So imagine if you were a golfer and you're playing with your buddies and gambling, and you were able to hand your golf bag to Tiger Woods in his heyday and say, Tiger, play my round for me.
Wouldn't that be
Thinking,
nice?
what? Okay. Well, that's what I do. And there literally is nobody even close to me in the country doing this. And I and my team are so good at it. We make it where there's no financial risk to you. You can go to pibillingpros.com and see about that source there. But again, there's no financial risk. You're not only paying on success, and all the money comes to you and then you pay. So you maintain control. It's awesome.
You know,
The
I
last would
just,
be,
yeah, go ahead.
last I would say, for those that are really like to do it yourself, but you want to get better, faster, and easier, I really believe in coaching. Like Dr. Ray's an awesome coach, by the way. If you ever have a chance to get coached by Dr. Ray, he's amazing. But to do that, you need people who know what they're doing. And so I think where I'm doing weekly calls with my group, I've got tools, resources, other forms that I've created, preset communications with attorneys. I'm actually developing an AI lien negotiation tool to where providers can negotiate with attorneys through my AI and be able to do the responses with them. So there's all kinds of awesome stuff. And that's the PI our Personal Injury Made Easy's Business Advantage program. And I think everybody would like to have the business advantage, and you'd like to get it like a pro. So I encourage you to realize whatever your level or the extent you want to dive into it, self-learner, do it yourself, or outsource it. There are ways that I can help, or seek help by whoever you can that you feel confident with. Just don't stay like you are and do nothing. You got to take action, be action-oriented.
You know, I was just reading the Chiropractic Economics annual salary survey, and it had a breakdown on the percentage of practice that is, cash, workers' comp, PI. And man, it's like not even 10%, maybe up to 17% for some practices. And when you look at, if you're going to spend time in the office, do you want to be doing $500 an hour work or $100 an hour work? And the reality is, if you embrace PI, you become good at it. It is no doubt one of the last big profit centers that's out there. And it really surprises me to see that so few are involved in personal injury. It's, leaving money on the table. So get a coach. So I got some for fun questions for you. Go ahead. What were you going to wrap up with?
I was going to say, just realize when it's not how much money you make, it's how much you keep in your pocket at the end of the day, right? And time. Like Dr. Ray's talking about, listen, if you could see less patients but make the same amount of money, you freed up all this time to do what you want, see more patients, or go travel more. That's where PI is so awesome when you do it right. You're not going to hit every case, but the thing is, one PI case generally equates to maybe 3 or 4 insurance patients, if not more.
Yeah, easily.
Okay? So realize the power of that. And when you just got to learn to do it. So what are the other specific questions, Doc?
Yeah, these are just for fun questions. All right. Who's your hero and why?
My dad's my hero. He passed
You
away
know,
long
That is
ago.
it's a very common reaction. I actually ask just about every employee I've ever hired, and 9 times out of 10, it brings tears. And I don't ask it to bring tears. I ask it because often those people had such an impact on you and made you who you are. So that's why I think it's important.
My dad was a man, handshake is all you needed, and he wouldn't break it, even if it meant his family was going to have a problem, right? His word was his bond, and it was this ultimate. I mean, he was sick and did the takeover of a bank at a deposition that I was at. We fed
Wow.
IVs because the other people on the board were being unethical in what they did it, and he got him kicked out. That was my dad, right? So I just absolutely adored it. He died well over 20 years ago, and miss him. But that would be my person.
Yeah, that's good. What talent do you have that most people don't know about?
Well, you know what? I'd like to think that I'm fantasy sports. It's become a sport now. But I was
No
doing it
kidding.
back when you're looking at the newspaper to get the stats and do it. I still getting on two of my kids. I've got 5 boys and a girl. And, in the early days, I was trying to get them to do with me an online fantasy site for fantasy sports. If they would have done it, we'd be rich. Should be done.
What's the worst job you ever had?
I'm going to go back to my dad. And when my dad was a believer, when you work, it was a metal fabrication company. Outside, hot, metal. But you start from the bottom. You do every job, work your way to get in the office. So I started out doing toilets in the stock room.
There you
And
go.
boy, were those long, long days.
Yeah, those are the kinds of things that I think more kids need to be exposed to because it provides such great motivation to get an education or get into a good trade and go to school. My worst job was working at a catfish farm. And so guess how you gather
Smell.
Yeah, I mean, they gather catfish by 2 tractors on each side of the bank. They drag a net, and we're down there throwing catfish up on the bank, and occasionally, a moccasin. And so it's great motivation to later on become a chiropractor and not have to do that anymore.
I could smell Ray coming from a mile away.
Yeah, I washed all that off many years ago, thank goodness. Well, thanks for spending some time with us today, Michael, and thank you all for listening to the ChiroSphere podcast. Please subscribe and share the podcast with your friends. Let us know who you'd like to hear from in the future and what topics you'd like us to cover, and we'll do our best to deliver. If you want to learn more about Chiro Health USA and how we can help you develop a compliant, profitable discount strategy that will grow your practice, income, and most importantly, profitability, call us at 888-719-9990 or visit our website at chusa.com, that's CHUSA.com, to find out why Chiro Health USA is the network that works for chiropractic and you. Thanks again, Michael.
You're welcome. And everybody go to Personal Injury Made Easy. You can find out about all the things I talked about.
There you go.
PersonalInjuryMadeEasy.com.
All right. Y'all have a great day.